Private Lender Podcast, episode 115.
The Private Lender Podcast quote of the day comes to us from Jonathan Swift, who said, "A wise person should have money in their head, but not in their heart."
This is the Private Lender Podcast, the show that shares practical advice and know-how for new and seasoned lenders, from private mortgages on single-family houses to joint ventures on commercial projects and beyond. Discover details about investment vehicles that you won't find at your local bank or online broker. Listen and learn from private lenders and real estate investors, as well as from professionals and entrepreneurs, as they share the details, strategies, and the insight that allows for successful and prosperous lending. Now, get ready to increase your ROI. Here's your host, Keith Baker.
Hello, Private Lender Nation, and welcome to episode 115 of the Private Lender Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Baker, and I'd like to thank you for sharing your time and your ears with me today. If you're looking for practical tips and advice on private lending and how to build and maintain wealth outside of banks or Wall Street, then you are in the right place. And if you want to put the power of a bank in your retirement account, you should probably pull up a chair. But if you want to learn from my boneheaded mistakes so that you can avoid them, well, then pour yourself a stiff whiskey drink, my friend, because this podcast is just for you. Before we get to the housekeeping, I just want to take a moment and say, thank you for sticking with me through 115 episodes. They all haven't been pretty. Let's face it, but I'm still kicking them out. Maybe only twice a month right now, but they're still coming out, and there's still more to come. So my nasally voice will continue to drain on in your headphones, hopefully for some time to come. So the housekeeping, real quick: Facebook Private Lender Podcast Facebook page. Just search it. You do have to be a lender. There's a few questions. Answer them. I'll get a notice, and it may take me a few days. But if you answer the questions, even seemingly honestly, I will let you in. But if you don't answer the questions, you will not be allowed in. So I just want to try to keep the riffraff out and not have a whole bunch of people saying, "What are your rates? How much? What are your points?" So I wanted to keep it just for private lenders so that we can talk amongst ourselves. So remember, a Facebook group, Private Lender Podcast Facebook group, and then the easy button that is go to privatelenderpodcast.com/Inc. INK. Click the button. I just dropped my chair. That's funny. Fortunately, you can't see that on YouTube, but I just dropped about 6 inches in my chair. So anyhow, what was I saying? Oh yeah, privatelenderpodcast.com/Inc. Bottom line, click the button. Give us a little bit of your information. Paul will reach out to you, set up a time to talk and see if lending to him and his criteria at Blink Lending is a good fit. So, in the nutshell, you lend to the hard money lenders, the people who do this every day, day in and day out. They vet the deals, you put your money to work behind theirs, and it's fairly passive. So anyhow, I'm not getting any money for this right now. I'm not charging Paul. I'm just seeing how this goes. We're getting some traction and some interest. So it's the easy button to begin your private lending career or endeavors, I should say. But anyhow, let's move on to the brass tacks of today's show. I don't even really have a title except, this is really the subject matter is taking the pulse on your local market or the markets that you're lending in. Let's face it, this is coming down. This should be released into November 2020. It's been a crazy, just nutty year. I personally know people who were optionally unemployed for a while, which kind of boggled my mind that they were okay with it. Maybe that's how they dealt with, the pandemic and everything. But that was one thing I couldn't get my head wrapped around. What have we seen? We've seen eviction moratoriums, foreclosure moratoriums, new spike in COVID cases here recently. And yet somehow Wall Street appears to be just thriving while pretty much everyone agrees that Main Street is drying up and dying. So it's just weird. REITs took it on the chin pretty hard early on in this pandemic, but they still haven't returned back to their pre-COVID prices. And looking in the Wall Street Journal a few days ago, so I don't know the date, but nationwide housing sales are up 14%. Across the board. So this got me thinking. Okay, it's time I need to take a check and put it on the pulse on the Houston market here, and see what's going on. And I'm going to do a little prognosticating for example. I don't know when things are going to happen, but they're going to happen, right? So my personal lending, I'm not doing a whole lot of single family right now. I'm doing more of limited partnerships with commercial, and got into multifamily finally. So, but those were kind of unicorn deals. Those weren't your standard garden variety types of things. But on the single family front, I'm hoarding a little cash right now. I don't mind losing out on some interest or some points right now in order to have the flexibility and the freedom to move and pounce when I think the time is right. So I'm doing shorter term for sure on the private lending. If I am doing any single family, I won't be doing a 3-year wraps or anything like that. It's going to be bridge money, flip money, so to speak. Purchase, rehab, and move on. So that's where I'm coming from in terms of why I'm looking into this and what I'm doing in my own market. So there's a couple of places I like to look, and that's when I'm trying to check out the market, and that's the local MLS. And here that's HAR, Houston Area Realtors.com, HAR.com, and they put out monthly press releases, and they show sort of month over month statistics, and sometimes year over year as well. And I mean, they don't get too crazy deep. You can get into, I understand, at old RIA meetings there, and I've had them both of them on the show. Both Ray Sasser and Stephen Kaufman they would pour through the MLS data and tell you like the 5 hottest zip codes for privately funded transactions or non-commercial paper transactions, distressed sales, all that kind of stuff. They would put all that together. So I know it's there. I myself haven't gone to the depth of digging it all out like they did. Maybe I should send them an email and find out. But I know it. Ray said one time, not even in jest, that it took a long time to sort through the data and prepare the report. But anyhow, these press releases that you get from your local MLS, they have total sales, average of the average sales price for single family, the median, the number of listings, how many sales are pending, and how many months of inventory is sitting out in the market. And I just thought for giggles that I would look at right before the last time when things got really bad at the Great Recession with the mortgage bust, the mortgage, the whole thing, the Great Recession was started by piss poor mortgage lending standards, and then even poorer commoditization and reinsurance on those credit default swaps and whatnot. But anyway, it all started it. So I'm not saying that we're going to see that again, right? I'm just going back to the last benchmark in the Houston area that I have easy access to on the computer. So in September of 2007, from September 7th, 2007 to September of 2008, the total number of property sales fell 29.5%, almost a third at the beginning, right? Total dollar volume dropped 28%. Interestingly enough, the average sales price went up 4%, and the median sales price went up 5%. But total active listings had dropped, and total pending sales dropped 38%, which is kind of funny because I look at what we have now and comparing October of 19 to October of 20. I know it's not September, but it's close enough. Total property sales in the Houston area are up 31.5%. Total dollar volume is up 46%. Total active listings are down 25.9%. Single family home sales up 30%. Average sales price is up 12%. Median up 11%. Single family months of inventory, 2.4 months or 1.4. So in October of 19, we had 3.8 months of inventory. Now it's 2.4 months of inventory, and the single family pending sales is 38.6%. Now, I'm not saying that we're having a bubble or anything like that. I'm not trying to make any correlation necessarily, just other than it's interesting to look at these numbers because there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? So, but this is one way I like to look at the Houston market. The Houston market is booming and going, even though we've had the shutdowns. There are restaurants closing, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, people are, it's urban flight. We're seeing some of that, not a whole lot, but we're seeing some of that. Not like New York, but, anyway, the point being, I don't think this pandemic market will sustain itself. That's my gut feeling. It's the bet that I'm gambling on. At some point, it's going to end, and with the talk of a vaccine, and now, well, if there's a vaccine, maybe the next round of stimulus doesn't need to be as much. Things can get really, really nutty here. So I think we are, it's unprecedented times, but we have to, I think, not look back, but look to the past to see some signposts, right? To see how, in 2005, 2004, 2006, property sales were, everybody was winning, right? You just speculate and make money. It was great. I'm not saying that's the same thing that's happening now, but look at the numbers. I think these are not normal cyclical market drivers here. The pandemic is certainly not that. The stimulus is certainly not a normal market driver. So I personally think that we're seeing some not a bubble, but we're seeing some froth before a correction, right? And I'm not saying like the Great Recession's coming again. Just your normal garden variety correction, bear market is all I'm really looking for now. Of course, if it's worse than that, then that's better for investors, right? That's where we can really swoop in and make some money. But I'm not betting my farm on a huge correction or recession. Just it's got to be a correction. That's all there is. That's my prognostication for what we're coming to see. The other interesting thing I found, and this is October of 2020 data, that houses from $1 to $150,000 are the sales have dropped from 1 to 99,000, or 1 to 100 it dropped 23%, and from 100 to 150 it dropped 22%. The 150 to 250 range, that would be I would say that's your average house here in the Houston area, greater Houston area, is the 150 to 250 range. It increased by 18%. The $250,000 to $500,000 increased 46.7%. From 500 to 750,000 increased 58%. And houses that cost more than $750,000, those are some very nice houses in the Houston area, 750 and above increased by 81.5%. I think this gives you a little more reason or insight into why I made my earlier prognostication and whatnot. This is just crazy. It's never been sustainable for long periods of time. So, but I think, the lower, the bread and butter houses, that's what the 1 to 150, sort of that flip and or rental price, really, am I surprised that it's down? No, I just think it's odd that it's, it's down almost a quarter, and, everything else is just boom, boom, boom. Anyhow, that's what I take from my local MLS here. Another great source that is statewide is at Texas A&M. There's a real estate center, and they have a weekly or monthly newsletter where they talk about projects and funding and what's going on, who's building where, who's buying what project and converting it to something else. But you can glean a lot of interesting data on the major metroplexes in Texas, and I only assume that in whatever state you're dwelling in or lending in, that there's probably a university doing something very similar, or some type of nonprofit or an organization out there that's tracking these things and is oftentimes a great source of information, sort of like a Chamber of Commerce type of thing. But at least with the one here in Texas, we don't have to join anything. You just give them your email address and then they create your TikTok account for you. No, I'm kidding. That was a bad joke. Anyhow, but that is one. That is another source that I've used to try to keep fingers on the pulse of the market. And the last thing I want to sort of bring up is, Fannie and Freddie Mac began tracking interest rates back in 1971, and we're sitting at historically low interest rates, right? That's why housing prices are going up, because it's so cheap. Money's cheap now, right? Even hard money lenders are bringing their rates down because they want to compete. And as private lenders, we don't necessarily have to do that, right? We don't have to compete. So don't sit there and have no money out being loaned out. But at the same time, you don't need to take less than your terms, right? Until the market suggests otherwise. But there's always off-market deals. And the beautiful thing about being a private lender instead of a hard money lender is you don't have to go lend every day, right? That's one thing I like about it. God bless people like Steve and Paul and those guys. That's what they do. They like lending money, but I like lending as a hobby or an investment more. Anyway, that's just my little my 2 cents. But so we got interest rates historically low. We don't know if there's another stimulus plan. Are we going to get locked down again? My colleagues in the UK are already locked down in November of 2020. And this bull market is long in the tooth. Dow 30,000. Wow. We did have a little 10% correction about a year or two ago, but that is a long, long run. So I think it's wise if everybody be ready for it. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. It might not be in 2021. But at some point, the tides will turn, and there will be other opportunities again, especially in this crazy place we call planet Earth. So, as you guys know, I don't charge money for the show, but there is a cost, and I would be extremely grateful if you would help drive awareness to the show, the podcast here, to get word out by leaving me an honest rating and review over at iTunes, Google Podcast, or whatever platform you're using to hear my voice. It doesn't take that long, and I do think it's a small price to pay. Yes, it's a hassle, but iTunes has made it easier. So, and like I said, I would love a 5-star review, but I truly only ask for an honest rating and review. If you're looking to create your stable of private lenders or know people who have money but don't realize the power that private lending can provide, then please let them know. Send them a text, an email, a DM, introduce them to this podcast, or send an email to them and copy me at keith@privatelenderpodcast.com. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And so that's going to wrap it up for episode 115. Just a few thoughts. Please remember to go to the Facebook group, Private Lender Podcast Facebook group. And also the easy button to private lending is over at privatelenderpodcast.com/Inc. That's INK Inc. So as I sign off, I'd like to say, besides self-awareness, I wish you safe and prosperous private lending. I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Private Lender Podcast with your host, Keith Baker. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit privatelenderpodcast.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time.